Hi, I'm Joe Saunders with Miniature Landscape Hobbies, and in this episode we're going to look at a fast, effective way to make winter-themed bases for your models. Let's get to it. Miniature Landscape Hobbies is proudly supported by these sponsors. I'm Canadian, so I guess winter and snow effects should be second nature to me. And it's true that I live in the snow belt, but the topic of building snow bases for my models has been pretty far from my mind. Until recently. A couple of months back, I got a hold of the awesome Lower Canada Silver Bayonet models by North Star Miniatures. These cool models ooze character, and since they're Canadian, they really just demand a winter base. So, because of this, I got to work trying to come up with a plan that works for good, almost display quality winter miniature bases. And after a little experimentation, I arrived at a method that I thought was both easy to do, but also looked first rate. In this video, I'm going to show you this process. Now please understand, there are a ton of ways to base your miniatures, but this is one that I like. And I hope you can learn from this example to gain some new skills that might help you with your work. So with that out of the way, it's time to get down to business. First up, we need to collect the materials for the job. You'll need some grit. In my case, I use a mix of 80% sandbox sand to 20% kitty litter. Some mixing cups are also essential. The snow flock is next. I have the Gale Force 9 brand, but any type will do. We'll need an adhesive to work with, so I get out Mod Podge and an old paintbrush to spread it. Paint is next, for which I use light blue, green, and white. I also grab the speed paints Plasmatic Bolt, Battleship Gray, and Brownish Decay. This is optional, but I also get out a brown acrylic marker to do the base rims. But of course you could just use paint here. Grass tufts are next, and these are also optional, but I really think they go a long way to add interest. And if you use these, you need hairspray to go along with them. You'll see why later. Rubbing alcohol is next. We need this to work as a thinner, and a pipette is also required to dispense this. Following these materials, I get out a couple of sculpting tools and a pair of tweezers to help manipulate the tufts. Lastly, we need the model, of course. Basing is the last step, so just go ahead and finish your subject first as you see fit. With these materials on hand, now it's time for step 1, which is applying the grit. To do this, I mix some Mod Podge with light blue paint and spread this on the base with my brush. I choose blue to provide an icy colored substrate, but you could use brown for dirty snow or exposed earth. Now dip the base in the grit mixture and shake off the excess. While the Mod Podge is still wet, we can use the rubbing alcohol method to lock the grit in place. To do this, mix a little Mod Podge with the Plasmatic Bolt speed paint. This creates a teal color. I chose this to give a deep icy look to the base, but of course any color could work. On top of this, I mix in rubbing alcohol until the mixture flows. Using a pipette, I then apply this to each base over the grit. Now the models all get set aside to dry. This now gives me a bit of a break, so I turn to my grass tufts. The ones I have aren't really ready for winter, so I go to work on them. Now, if you don't want grass tufts, you can of course skip this step, but I think they really enhance the look of any base. First, I take a portion of the tufts that I want to use and cut the paper backing so that I have the perfect number for the project. Then, I lightly spritz these with my hairspray. Use a cheap spray here. Hairspray can get expensive, and honestly, the miniatures don't care which brand you use. Now I immediately sprinkle the tufts with snow flock. You can go as light or as heavy as you want. Then I spray the tufts again with the hairspray to lock the flock down. This can all get set aside at this point to dry. After a couple of hours, the grit's all firmly glued down and I can move ahead. I go back to the base themselves and start by mixing light blue, white, and green paints together to make kind of a light teal color. This now gets a light dry brush over top the grit. I follow up with further dry brushes of light blue and finally white. This creates a sense of depth to the snow and makes for a nice looking icy base. You could honestly just do this with regular earth tones as well, but I wanted something different from the literally thousands of bases I've made before, all done with some shade or other of brown. So I thought blues, teals, and whites made for a really nice change. Following this, I dip my grass tufts in Mod Podge and glue them down to the bases here and there. Getting a sculpting tool, I put a couple of heaping piles of snow flock in a mixing cup and pour some Mod Podge on top of them. Then I mix this all up. I go for a smooth but thick consistency, but you could of course change the proportions as you see fit to get a snow texture that suits you. Now I grab a mini trowel and spread the mixture where I want the deep snow to go. I also sprinkle a little more extra snow flock on top of this mixture while it's still wet to add some more texture on top. When the mix is dry, the snow looks very fresh, but it could use a bit of definition. So I turn back to my speed paints. I water down Battleship Gray and Brownish Decay until they're almost transparent. Then I paint these on in patches. When they dry, the thin speed paints imply discoloration from mud and dirt in the snow, and also the blue-grays add a sense of depth to the deepest areas in the snow and slush. The bases are all now virtually finished, so I prepare the rim by simply coloring it in with my brown acrylic marker. This takes 2 coats. Finally, we have to consider that these are game pieces. They're going to get handled and they're going to suffer some wear and tear. To help with mitigating any damage to them then, I spray everything with matte varnish. This protects my work and adds some structure to the terrain effects, but it does reduce the shiny nature of the snow. To fix this and add the glossiness back, I brush on some gloss varnish over the deepest areas. And when this is all dry, the bases are finished. Now I have some pretty decent snow bases that are perfect for the northerly and harsh climates of Canada. You know, where I live. I'm really looking forward to using these characterful models with equally characterful bases. Now I need to build some winter-themed terrain to go with them and get ready for some new games of Silver Bayonet. But first, I have to go outside and shovel. If you'd like to learn more about painting Silver Bayonet models, please consider watching this video, or watch this other video instead. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, but most importantly, remember to keep building life in miniature.